I mean, I sort of alluded to it, but I think that generative AI and its hallucinations are just exposing the ugly underbelly of incompetence that's always existed in our profession. I think that a lot of people have gotten away with incompetent legal work for far too long, and they've just been given the benefit of the doubt. And this is just exposing it. It's one thing to use somebody else's brief and apply it to your case and not read it, like someone else's brief in your firm, or to do sloppy legal research or not read the research or not read what the associates provided you and you sign your name to it. But it's a whole other, and it's easier for in those situations for the court to be like, oh, well, they must have just mistyped a number and they really meant a different citation, or they misquoted the case, or that's really not what the proposition they meant to cite when they cited that particular case. It was really a different case that stood for that legal proposition. But now it's like that case doesn't even exist. Like, what are you talking about?
Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, your go-to podcast for legal innovation. I'm Joe Stevens.
And I'm Adrian. Today, we're thrilled to have Nicole Black, Principal Legal Insight Strategist at 8 a.m. with us. Nicole is a former litigator turned legal tech and AI expert who has spent her career helping the legal community embrace innovation to improve practice management.
Nikki's expertise is unmatched, having authored several books, written columns for prestigious legal publications, and been a leading voice in advocating for the adoption of legal tech and AI in the profession. We're excited to hear her insights on the future of law, AI's role, and how legal tech is transforming the industry.
Nikki, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to the conversations.
Definitely. Really excited to dig into it. So for the audience, give us a little bit about your background. I understand that you were, or still are, an attorney and a litigant. You used to be working in the law firms, and now you're a leading columnist and writer for the legal tech space. Tell us more about that. Tell us about that journey.
Well, I started my career in the public defender's office here in Rochester, New York, and I worked there for a couple of years and got lots of trials under my belt, and it was definitely a great experience. Then I moved on to a litigation firm and did a lot of civil litigation, and I continued to do criminal defense. And I've also been of counsel to a DWI defense firm. And in about 2005, I started my legal technology blog. Well, at the time, it was just a legal blog, Sui Generis. And it was from that blog that sort of transitioned into legal tech as I started talking about how lawyers could use blogs and social media and all these other tools to both market their practices, but also to practice law, and how they were becoming increasingly relevant in the practice of law. And from there, I just made all sorts of connections with other lawyers who were tech forward, who were blogging and active online, and all of those connections kind of led to where I am today, which is almost 14 years in with my case. I was employee number one with my case, which is law practice management software. Started in 2012 with them, and have been with them through lots of changes, quite a few acquisitions. And our home today is with 8 a.m., which is the parent company of my case, LawPay, CasePure, and DocketWise, and we provide legal professionals with the tools they need to run their law firms and grow their law firms.
Nikki, I'm also a public defender in my blood and still very much am. And I teach at the law school, and I teach criminal trial skills using actually like indigent cases. And we have a public defender housed in the law school. So I am really interested because you're the first guest that we've had, to my knowledge, Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, who has that public defender sort of origin story. But then you've done this pivot that not many public defenders do. How did that explain that?
Well, in 2005, I started that legal blog. And the reason I had taken a couple of years off from the law firm, one of my dogs always manages to get up here, even though I put the gate across. I had taken a couple of years off from the law firm after I had my first kid, and decided to get back into the practice of law after about 2.5 years, because I'd read an article that said, both from your perspective and the perspective of employers, once you hit that 3-year mark, it becomes a lot harder. So I drew on my tech experience, which, looking back, I really have always enjoyed tech. Um, I took a programming class in Pascal in college. Uh, in 1995, right when I got to law school, I learned HTML and created a website, just sort of for myself. I don't know why I did that. It was just me on the website and like my bio. But I've always really liked tech. And when I was with the law firm, I created a website for them using Dreamweaver. I told them they needed a website. And so I've always really liked tech. So when I decided to hang a shingle doing contract work for other lawyers, I created a website for myself, and I had lunch with a cousin of mine who was my mentor in town, another attorney. And when he was walking away from me, he looked over his shoulder and he said, you might want to start blogging. I just heard about it on NPR. And I was like, oh, what's blogging? And I looked it up. And so I started a legal blog. And initially I wrote about cases as they were coming down. The idea being that I was targeting other lawyers to do research and writing for them. So I would show I could still write, show that I understood, I was on top of the cases, showcase my analytical abilities. And from that, there were not a ton of lawyers blogging at the time. And so it was a small circle of people to get to know. I started going to legal tech conferences. I started writing about using blogging, social media, and everything came from that blog and from those initial contacts. And I ultimately managed to not just have a career doing this, but have a really nice career. And I've been really fortunate in the way that things have turned out. And it's been great being part of employee number one for a small startup company that owned us the first time around, IPO'd, and I got to be at NASDAQ for their IPO and been through a couple of other acquisitions and had pre-stock options. I had I had an unusual, unpredictable, and not something I would have ever expected in terms of a career, but I love where I've ended up.
That's so fascinating. Just following a passion of yours, seeing where it's developed is an amazing story. I would love to know more about some of the different articles and just different publications that you've co-authored, especially around social media. Being the social media manager at Steno, I know how important it is to be on social, yet I don't know if that sentiment has fully spread across the legal industry just quite yet. It's catching on, you could tell. But you wrote about this as far back as 2010. So tell me about that. When did you see the writing on the wall and you're like, this is going to be big, more attorneys need to catch on?
Well, so 2005 is when I started blogging, and in 2007, I think 6 is when Facebook went from education accounts to just public. 2007 is when Twitter rolled out. LinkedIn was also right around then, but no one really paid attention to it back then. But I was on Twitter very early on. I still have an account, but I'm not active on it. But I had like 22,000 followers, which is a lot in the legal space. And so as I started using blogs, as I was active on Facebook and on LinkedIn, I quickly understood that lawyers needed to be there, not just for marketing purposes, but because people were engaging there. They were committing crimes. They were, they were committing defamation. They were cheating on their spouses. There's all sorts of evidence on social media, and they needed to understand how to navigate it just for that reason, So I was focusing both on the marketing and also the evidentiary aspects and how lawyers needed to ethically navigate that. And so I started probably writing about social media, I want to say in, 2007, probably. And I met Carolyn Elephant. She was my co-author for the ABA book on social media that was published in 2010. And I want to say in 2009, we wrote the book really quickly. She approached me and said, I'm under a deadline with the ABA for this social media book. And, you do social media as much as I do. And I know you write about it. Do you want to co-author it with me? And so basically we were able to get permission from I got permission from the Daily Record, which is where a lot of my articles had come from, to sort of reuse those articles and repurpose them and also add additional content for the book. And she and I were able to take a lot of stuff we'd already previously written and turn it into a book. And that was published in 2010 by the ABA. So
Are you finding now different kind of content being more captivating or engaging than, what you were focusing on 5-10 years ago? I mean, I imagine the answer to that is yes, but I'm kind of curious more in just the general evolution in what you're seeing, how the industry is sort of engaging with just your general authorship.
Well, now that everybody understands that it has value, it used to just be a lot of, this is what's on my mind right now. This is what I'm having for breakfast. Like there was a lot of that, and there still is that going on. But over time, it has become, people are planning, they're strategizing. I would argue the interactions aren't as off the cuff. They're strategic, and you particularly see that on LinkedIn, which has really taken off, especially since Twitter kind of became a dumpster fire. So it's it's been interesting to see LinkedIn, which really used to just be an online resume, turn into something else. What it's turned into is, I wouldn't I would argue, not ideal. And AI certainly hasn't helped social media engagement. I use it for social media, so don't get me wrong, but it's allowed people to churn out junk a lot quicker than they were able to before.
The AI slop is a real problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love your take on what you've seen the conversations around AI and legal tech be nowadays, right? Because about 10 years ago, AI was not as common of a conversation in the legal tech space. It was mainly just, how do I improve this workflow? Maybe develop a software. But now we're seeing AI just completely transform workflows. How have you seen this completely change in terms of what there is out there, what law firms need to be educated on?
Well, 2017 is when you first started seeing legal tech products with AI in them, not generative AI, but AI. Um, and once ChatGPT rolled out in November 2022, it has certainly impacted the practice of law. It's like pretty much doubles year over year in terms of legal tech adoption, and the rate of adoption is unlike anything I've seen before. I mean, the cloud, it took a decade to get where we are now with AI. Um, it The problem is that because there's still hallucinations, it's certainly transforming workflows. I would argue in some cases not in the best way, and you're seeing a lot of fa- um, not just fake case citations, but just entire briefs. The law that's stated is incorrect. The quotes are incorrect. The propositions for which cases supposedly stand for are incorrect. It's sort of exposing a level of negligence, I would argue, has always kind of been there, but people have gotten away with because they get the benefit of that. But when you're just outright creating fake cases that just can't even be located, you lose the benefit of the doubt. So it also is absolutely allowing lawyers to do things faster. Lawyers that understand how to use it properly are really reaping the benefits. And, these tech problems are going to be solved. And it's going to just increase the efficiency of workflows more and more, and really just change the overall structure of the legal profession in a lot of ways as well, which will be interesting to watch.
Nikki, do you chalk those hallucinations? Obviously, it's everyone's big fear is sort of once a week there's this new case, there's a new set of sanctions coming from a new judge in a different county or different judicial district somewhere. I mean, is that an AI problem? Like, I just, obviously the idea that you ask a question and then there's an answer that is incorrect is in some sense a problem. But I'm wondering the degree to which we're sort of misaligning the problem with the actual technology itself. Like what things are, what is it, where does it just boil down to sort of a misunderstanding or a misdeployment of really powerful technology?
I don't even think it's a misdeployment. It's all the pressures that lawyers are under. I would argue that they're far worse than they used to be in terms of billable hours, in terms of um, client demands, in terms of competition. There's a lot of stressors that didn't used to be. I mean, it's always been a stressful job, don't get me wrong. And the deadlines and as an attorney, the buck stops with you. You're the one ultimately responsible for any legal malpractice, even if your secretary is the one that puts the wrong thing in the envelope and sends it off to the wrong party. You're the ones that's ultimately responsible if that means you miss a deadline in a case or something. So it's always been a stressful job, but I think it's more stressful now than it ever has been. And everything's moving faster. In some ways, tech has had this negative impact on people's lives where they have to get more done in less time. And so they're trying to find shortcuts, and it's definitely a shortcut. But what's happening is it's taking what we've always done, and everyone's done it. I absolutely did this as a public defender, but I was able to rely on like our appeals department that drafted all of our motions, those standard motions that we use. I would rely on the fact that the motions they drafted had current law, and that they would amend them because that was their job. But, I didn't look up all the cases that were cited in my, motion to suppress a statement or something. I just filed our motion for that, and I didn't read any of it. There's no way I could have. I had 600 misdemeanors. We had one of the highest caseloads in the country back then. So we all have done that. And when you submit a memo to a partner, over time, the partner, initially the partners used to scrutinize my memos. And over time, they realized that they could count on me to do it right. And I don't think that they necessarily read the memo fully. And I don't think that they certainly didn't always read the underlying cases. They trusted that I'd done the work. So we've all done that in one way or another. But what is happening now is that what ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using spits out looks really good. I mean, it's convincing. It sounds good. It looks good. And people are just assuming that it's accurate. And another thing is people sometimes have memos that they already have and throw them in there to have it updated or corrected, and ChatGPT will change stuff, and people don't realize that's happening. So there's all sorts of things happening, but I think it's kind of exposing a level of incompetence that was always there that's been amplified by technology. And so I really don't think it's an AI problem or a technology problem. It's a failure to understand the technology and a failure to just exercise basic competence.
You write a lot about legal tech and speak at conferences on it. Is there a tech that you thoroughly recommend to or any type of lawyer, law firms that is not solely based on AI? Is there any other type of legal tech out there that they should be adopting?
Well, I mean, listen, I usually wear my neutral hat, but of course I'm going to say practice management software and billing software, like the back end business software. That is what our company does. It doesn't mean you have to use 8 a.m.'s tools, although I think you should definitely look into them if you're in the market. But, you know, you need to have software to run your law firm. It keeps you ethically compliant, both in terms of, you know, uh, not mixing your operational account and funds with your trust account funds, but it also just allows you to be more efficient, understand what's happening in your firm, um, collect payments efficiently, track payments, track expenses. It allows you to be a lot more efficient and run the back end of your practice, um, automated in a way that allows you to really focus more on practicing law rather than the business side, especially as you're a smaller firm. It can really take up a lot of time to do a lot of the admin stuff.
Nikki, when you just mentioned ethical compliance, obviously that is a huge part of being a lawyer, and that affects everything from finances to client communication, all these different things. Um, I'm interested. Malpractice is obviously a very charged word, and I'm not necessarily meaning it this way. But do you think we are at a point with AI, as disruptive as it is, that to not use it is some form of malpractice? Not malpractice in the standard sort of legal sense, but like, are you doing a disservice to your clients by not at least understanding and using AI in some form or fashion in your practice?
Well, with technology, including AI, you have a professional obligation to understand the technology and make an educated decision about whether to use or not use it. Um, I mean, that's just a requirement, especially in 2026. But when it comes to AI, I don't think we're at the point where not using it is malpractice. I don't think we're there yet. I certainly think we're going to get there, and we're going to get there way faster than we have for other types of technology. But right now, I think it's arguably malpractice not to understand it and make a decision about when you shouldn't be using it. But I don't think we're quite there, but we're certainly going to get there. And the tech's advancing exponentially, so is adoption. And so we're going to get there a lot quicker than we, like I said, have with previous tools.
What do you think will take us? Like, what will get us there?
The tech has to stop hallucinating, and I don't know how long that's going to take, but um, until you can absolutely rely on the output and trust the output, um, it in some cases it's taking lawyers more time to use the tech right now especially when they're talking about legal research and writing as opposed to the things that automate the back end of your practice. That is a lot more accurate. And when you're working with very limited data sets, the AI's output, especially when it's guardrailed on the back end, is much more accurate, leaning towards 100% accurate. But when it's legal research and analysis, which is ultimately the lawyer's job to do the analysis, it can really go sideways. And so, you have to solve that problem before lawyers can trust the output, and before lawyers should trust the output. And what's happening is, like, one of the headlines I saw, an article that talked about it. This lawyer used, I think it was 6, it might have been 5 different AI tools to cross check. I think it was his work, their work. I'm not sure which it was, but I'm pretty sure it was a guy. But they use some legal specific tools, some legal research tools. I won't throw one of them under the bus because I can't actually remember which one it was. And then they use like ChatGPT and Claude to cross check to see if it was accurate. And by the time they were done, they'd use 5 different tools. And at that point, you're talking about a game of AI telephone. There's no way the output's going to be accurate. Each one of them is going to make something up along the way. And they ended up in, another headline and another sanction. So, I mean, that's not, how long that took them to run all those through it. They could have just written the whole thing themselves, So right now, it's definitely not necessarily always the most efficient route.
Seeing as we're still somewhat early in the game for adoption, it's definitely happening fast. And as you've mentioned, it will be expedited. Do you think that law firms should have kind of a crisis management document of some sort on file, just making sure that they have their bases protected if this sort of case does arise where they've just submitted a document that is hallucinated?
Well, they should have training and policies in place as soon as they start adopting AI so that everybody understands the proper way to use it and the steps they need to take to ensure accuracy. And I mean, once a hallucinated document's submitted, I don't know if you need a document. I mean, you need to admit to the court what you did, and you need to like own up to it, and hopefully be allowed to resubmit. I don't know, but I think the work has to be done ahead of time in terms of documents and policies, I think.
And Nikki, how do you're talking about the internal policies and procedures? We're seeing a lot of state bars around the country, obviously, advise, suggest, encourage that firms need to have that in place, or anyone there has to be some sort of structure as to how products are vetted, how they're sort of analyzed, the training that's undertaken internally, etc. I'm not sure how familiar, like how much you see this, or what your thoughts are on this, but I do feel like there is a really big gap in that sense right now, because with your more seasoned practitioners who are not as tech fluent or may not be as tech fluent, although some very well may be, you have this incredibly deep skill set of practicing a certain way. Then you have your sort of recent law grads who have gone through law school on Zoom and understand how to AI their way through everything, but then don't have the actual soft skills that come with like a deep legal practice. And then somewhere in between all of this, there's this like just collision of worlds of, tech heavy versus skill heavy practitioners filling out a space. Do you have any sense of, or have you seen any really good success stories of how firms actually vet these products, or what skill sets actually lead to really good fluent tech adoption inside a law firm?
Well, it's definitely going to be dependent on firm size. I mean, when you have solo and small firms, it's usually one person doing the vetting. Then as you get into like mid-sized firms with like more than, I would argue, I don't know, 20 lawyers. We don't even really have great definitions about firm sizes, but 20 lawyers, then they start to make decisions by committee, usually of a small committee with some lawyers and some other people involved in the firm. And then when you get into large law firms, you have knowledge management folks that go out there and do a lot of the research, and IT folks, and entire teams that coordinate to choose the software for the firm. So I mean, I think it depends on the firm size. And I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what size firm it is, you need to have people that understand technology, that have an interest in technology, that are able to disseminate information, or that there's some sort of process to help them do that within the firm. And the larger the firm gets, the more you need to have formal trainings processes and classes, or there's software out there like my company uses an enterprise software that helps you set up training programs for your workforce across the board, both from technology and AI to sexual harassment training and all that other, lovely HR stuff. So, I mean, it really just needs to be formalized in much that way. And for firms that are adopting, they need to understand whoever's making those decisions needs to understand what do they already have? What are the tools that they already rely and trust? The providers that use those, provide those tools. Have they already rolled out AI? What is that AI? Maybe you missed it. Maybe you don't even know it's there and it's available in the next pricing tier. Does that solve your AI problems? I mean, look internally first at the stuff you're using, and then they need to be able to go out and look into the market once they identify the functions that they actually need and that are going to be the most useful, and find that in the market and then bring it back in and test it internally. You absolutely have to test drive some of it. So I don't know if I kind of went kind of broad on that one, but I mean, I think that's kind of the process you got to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you nail on the head.
When it comes to understanding what legal tech you are going to be writing about or being an evangelist for, what do you look for in a product to really make a recommendation or even speak on it as like, this is very useful?
Well, because I've worked for a legal tech company, when I don't tend to I mean, I recommend our company's products, right? But I then am not really able to go out and recommend anybody else's products per se. So when I'm writing about technology and wearing my press hat, if you will, it's a neutral hat, and what I try to do is neutrally provide information about technology and software. So my ABA journal column tends to focus on, most of the time, each column is about a certain category of software. Um, and what I try to do is provide information that people need to think about when choosing that software, let them know what it does, let them know about the things to think about when they choose it. And then I just provide information about the top software tools in that category that I'm aware of. And sometimes when I talk about, write an article on practice management software, I obviously have to talk about a bunch of our competitors because otherwise it's not a useful article. So, but I try to do it in as neutral a way as possible. And I've never had any complaints or pushback from competitors, so I think I must do a decent job. But I don't necessarily recommend any other types of software just because of my role.
Nikki, are you glad that you kind of grew up practicing, developing your skill set as a litigator and as a practitioner before a lot of this technology sort of, I mean, obviously tech was present, but I mean, this recent wave of tech, obviously, especially with AI, are you happy that that wasn't a part of your practice early on, and that you were able to develop a skill set without it? Or how do you sort of even consider something like that?
Well, I'm a little bit biased, but I'm Gen X, and I tend to think that my generation is the most resilient generation when it comes to technology because we, there was not technology when we were young. There just really wasn't. I remember when my dad brought home a TRS-80 when I was, I think I was 12. I don't remember how old I was. And I had to learn how to program BASIC to make it play Pong. Otherwise, it wouldn't do anything. It just would sit there. So, uh, so I was around computers from a young age, but they were not part of, I went to college with an electric typewriter. So my freshman year in college, I got a computer partway through college, a desktop, but, you know, and I've been through all the changes. And I think that it's very interesting when you look at, millennials grew up with tech, but doesn't mean they're necessarily tech savvy. They use the tech to communicate and stuff. My kids, the Gen Zers, have also grown up with tech, but I wouldn't say they're more tech savvy than I am. Gen X really is very resilient, and I just think I don't think I'm unique. I mean, certainly there's Gen Xers that don't use tech at all, but I do think that being able to go through the different stages, and at the beginning of my legal career, you learning how to use the books and legal research was helpful, but I don't think shepherdizing in books, which was painful, made me a better lawyer, but it, um, I guess helped me. I mean, that was just a tedious process, but I guess it helped me be a better lawyer, maybe using the books. I'm not really sure. I think it's almost more generational thing than a me thing and stages of my practice, but I could be wrong.
So, what do you think made you a better lawyer? What experiences or skills do you feel you really internalized that really leveled you up as an attorney?
Well, I mean, being a public defender, you're thrown in there feet first, with I had 600 cases, across different courts. And you got to practice law. You don't have a choice. You're in court all the time. You're constantly dealing with clients in really tough positions that are not necessarily the most stable people because they've come from really horrible backgrounds, never have had a lot of support in their lives. And so you learn a lot of people skills in that job. And you also have to learn how to think really quickly on your feet. Um, you have to learn how to deal with judges and, um, true believer DAs is what we used to call them, to put it kindly, who just give you the worst offers and just won't negotiate. And, you learn a ton in that job. And, um, I mean, that's where I think I learned the most and the quickest. And I had to do jury trials. I would have 6 jury trials stacked and I didn't know which one was going to go. And you can't prepare for 6 jury trials. You just go in there and you do a jury trial off the cuff, which is great experience. And I hope the results are almost always good for my clients, but certainly that's not what a client would would want. Their case ideal, but and half the time they wouldn't even get in touch with you. So it was a really great job, but I burned out. I mean, after 3-4 years of that, forget about it. But that was where I learned a ton of. Uh, I think the most was as a public defender.
Nikki, I think that's a lovely segue into something that I think you might be really uniquely positioned to answer given your background. Uh, there's this we hear it a lot, even ABA's most recent report about sort of the landscape of where the industry is with AI. There is this whole access to justice side of AI. There is this whole sense that it is a little bit democratizing and it allows, if you think about it, at its most extreme case, a public defender to do way more with way less. I mean, you're talking about finite resources and you've got a caseload that's almost unethically large, but that's just the trope of the public defender. Do you think that that's true as well? Are you seeing any good examples of where tech is really pushing on that access to justice front in a way that you find to be kind of like satisfying and rewarding?
Well, I tend to be a little cynical. I'm on Bob Ambrogi's webcast every Friday, and it's me and a bunch of other legal tech journalists, and I'm the one that's the most cynical about whether I think access to justice is actually going to solve, or AI is going to solve the access to justice problem. In my experience, when technology comes out at the end of the day, or when there's major changes made, like non-lawyer ownership of law firms, um, or sharing fees with non-lawyers, what ends up happening is capitalism trumps altruism, and capitalism, ultimately, it ends up profiting the companies, the corporations, not the little guy trying to get an attorney who can't afford one. So I tend to be a little cynical about it. But that being said, sometimes we take our little panel on the road, and we were at a conference, and we were counterpoint. Half of us took different positions on that. And afterwards, Jim Calloway came up to me. He's just retired, but he was the practice management advisor for the Oklahoma bar for I want to say 30 or 40 years. I can't remember how long he was there, but a really long time. And he said, I kind of disagree with you a little bit, and you should think about this. Um, it can truly help legal aid and public defenders, attorneys, to get a lot more done in a lot less time. So it really can, in a lot of ways, help them represent more people and represent them better. And I think that I think that that is true. But I think at the end of the day, the true impact of AI and all these pushes for access to justice, I think sometimes that's just a marketing ploy, and it's really just about making corporations more money. But I would love it that if I was wrong. So we'll see.
I was able to ask you earlier about what made you a better attorney. You wear multiple hats, though. You're an attorney, but you're also a very talented writer. So I would love to know, what do you think makes you a great writer, and has really developed your skills as a writer right from the beginnings of starting your blog in the 2000s?
Well, I've always enjoyed writing. I was in an advanced writing class in high school, and I've always really liked it. And I was a religion major and a psych minor in college, so I was a paper major, and I wrote a lot of papers. And sort of helped me hone my writing skills there. And when I was practicing law, one of the reasons, it wasn't just the fact that I'd had my second kid. And one of the reasons that drove me to want to stop practicing for a while was I felt like the creative part of my brain that I'd used to write for so long was shutting down, because legal writing is so constrained and so formulaic. And I sort of felt like a part of my brain was starting to, I can't, what's the word where it shrivels up? But Yeah, something like that. So that was one reason why I wanted to stop that type of writing. And so that in the 2.5 years that I took off, at one point I bought a book on nonfiction, like how to become a nonfiction writer, to write articles. And I was like, I don't know what I would write about, but I love the idea of writing nonfiction articles. Um, but then it certainly never occurred to me to write about technology. So I did just start writing that blog. Um, and I sort of fell into tech. And I've always really liked tech when I look back. I loved Star Trek. It got me through law school. I even left a law school final early so I could go to the premiere movie of, Star Trek The Next Generation, the movie that premiered I was 94, I think. But so I've always really liked tech. And so it really married I really love writing, and I can write on my own terms about the things that I'm most interested in. And my passion really is helping lawyers understand tech. And I'm super fortunate that I've been able to have leaders throughout the years across the iterations of my case that have understood that that's the value I bring and that let me continue to do that. And then internally, I provide a bridge across tech and lawyers too. I help the people creating the tech understand lawyers in the industry. But I mean, in terms of writing, part of it's just I'm able to write about something I really enjoy, and I have a lot of control. I write short pieces. Those are my favorite things to write. I do write books, and I do write our legal industry report for 8 a.m., which is 30 pages once, with all the graphics and everything. But I don't know. I just something I really love. But the fact that I can write about something that I really enjoy is what makes it easy, I think.
Nikki, we had another sort of writer, not the same as you, on a podcast earlier, and it was interesting. We did ask the same question. I'm curious how it is with you too. But do you use AI at all when you write in any part of the process?
I definitely use AI. It depends on the context. So I have a legal tech reality check LinkedIn newsletter. And that's written by AI 100%. Like that, I wouldn't be able to produce that newsletter if I didn't. I curate I curate everything over the course of a week, and I tell it what I want to say about each article. Um, but then it absolutely is pretty much 100% written by generative AI. Um, and then my LinkedIn posts, 90% of them are written by AI. I tell it what I want it to say, and I edit it significantly, but I use AI for that. For my actual writing, the titles, almost 100% of them are from AI because I'm horrible at titles. My editors used to always change them, and now they're better. And sometimes especially when I can't get started on a piece, I'll sometimes tell ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT Enterprise for work and Plus. I have a Plus subscription myself. But I will tell it to create a introductory paragraph and a conclusory paragraph, and I just pop those into the document just to get started, and then I write, and I'll go back and change those. Often I don't even use what it put in there, but it just kind of gets me started. And then throughout the writing process, I used to search like synonym of this word and end up on like thesaurus or something. Now I'll just ask ChatGPT, what are a couple synonyms, or how can I phrase this so that it doesn't use this same word twice? And I'll also sometimes use it if there's just a sentence I'm completely stuck on the wording on, to fix the phrasing of it. And I don't usually use exactly what it gives me. Um, but I will use it for that type of thing as well. And then I have it sometimes look at the entire article and give me some feedback. And sometimes I accept it and sometimes I don't. And we also use Grammarly. We have a Grammarly Pro subscription or whatever through work. And I accept some of that, and a lot of it I reject because it just makes everything sound the same. And the other problem with Grammarly and all the AI tools is, and I can't confirm that this is necessarily the case, but because it's trained on the entire internet, and a good portion of the English part of the internet is written by people that don't natively speak English, there's all sorts of weird phrasing that it picks up, and that like it uses the word crucial all the time. That's my pet peeve. And crucial is a good word, but it uses it in really weird context. And there's a bunch of other just words that it underscore, and there's just all these words that it uses in ways. Lags. It likes to use the word lags in a way that we don't use it if you grew up speaking English natively, which is fine. I mean, it's just that if I grew up speaking English natively and I want to write the way I think, and I don't like how it sometimes makes it sound like I'm coming from a different perspective that isn't me.
Being in social media with creating these posts, it'll use a very particular language as if we're making mic drop moments every single sentence. and it's like, that's not how you speak. It doesn't make
Right.
sense. So I totally understand the sentiment. I would love your take on, what do you think is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years? Looking ahead, we're obviously developing very fast in the legal tech space. Where do you see it going?
I mean, that's almost impossible to answer now. It's hard enough. What's hard enough to answer before generative AI? 5 years is pretty far out for tech, but I mean, that's almost impossible now because everything's moving so fast. And I absolutely, in 2022, when ChatGPT came out, the first time I tried it, would not have predicted we'd be where we are right now with this level of adoption. Even though I understood it was exponential change at that point, I still would not have predicted the level of adoption that we're seeing now. Because I author our legal industry report, and this is going to be it comes out next month, and it's going to be the third year that we've tracked generative AI data. And, the level of adoption is just astonishing. That some of the data from this year is kind of mind boggling. So I can't predict 5 to 10 years out. I'd have a hard time. I could predict next year, maybe the year after that. Outside of that, I'm not even sure. I'm not sure we're all going to even be here. So I think I think we're maybe going into like Terminator or Battlestar Galactica territory. We'll see.
Well, I mean, it could not be a more ideal segue to our closing question here, Nikki, which we ask at the end of every single episode. But what would your hot take on the industry be?
I mean, I sort of alluded to it, but I think that generative AI and its hallucinations are just exposing the ugly underbelly of incompetence that's always existed in our profession. So that's sort of my hot take. I think that a lot of people have gotten away with incompetent legal work for far too long, and they've just been given the benefit of the doubt. And this is just exposing it. It's one thing to use somebody else's brief and apply it to your case and not read it, like someone else's brief in your firm, or to do sloppy legal research or not read the research, or not read what the associates provided you and you sign your name to it. But it's a whole other, and it's easier in those situations for the court to be like, oh, well, they must have just mistyped a number and they really meant a different citation, or, oh, they misquoted the article, the case, or that's really not what the proposition they meant to cite for that. When they cited that particular case, it was really a different case that stood for that legal proposition. But now it's like that case doesn't even exist. Like, what are you talking about? It's so easy to disprove, to prove that they didn't read it. And so I think it's just sort of exposing the ugly underbelly of incompetence that's long existed in our profession, that's just been getting worse. So that's my hot take on that.
I love that. You have no idea how much I love that hot take. I think it's fantastic. And with that, we're going to wrap today's episode of Between the Briefs. And a big thank you to Nicole Black for sharing her invaluable insights. Adrian, any final thoughts from you?
No, I absolutely loved having you on, Nikki. Thank you so much for joining us. And to
My
everyone
pleasure.
else listening, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes as we continue to explore the innovations shaping the legal landscape.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.
Up next on Between the Briefs.
Yeah. Well, listen, I would love to be a lawyer. I would love, if I could do anything, if I had a magic wand, I would be a litigator. But here's the thing that I realized. This is Jeff Bezos' story that goes with this, right? So Jeff Bezos is in grad school and he's in advanced physics and he's studying for a test and he's like with his best friend Omar and they're like cranking it out. And like they get to this one problem, they can't figure it out. And they're like, let's go down the hall and talk to Joe. So they go down the hall and they're like, hey, Joe, what's the answer to this? Like, can you help us out? And he goes, yeah, sure. And he literally pulls out a napkin and goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And they've been working for 2 hours on this. And in like, I don't know, 3 minutes, he's got the answer to it. And Jeff Bezos changed his major the next day to IEEE and computer science. And I'm like, that's my story as well. I met people in high school and college that had photographic memories. And I realized I would never be one of the top lawyers.
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.